Hello, friends. It's Chapo.
I don't know if you noticed.
So it just kicked off, and Jacob Rees-Mogg is starting, like the starting gun for the Tories, goes on radio or TV and says the 70 plus people who died in the Grenfell fire did so because they were just too not self-reliant enough to leave the building.
Yeah, but
and I've seen that like other people in the British press are defending him now.
But that's just capitalism.
Right.
It's social Darwinism applied to the economy, right? If you can't get out of the building, it's probably because you weren't entrepreneurial enough. Maybe if they'd owned their own homes, then they would have cared more and the fire wouldn't have started in the beginning.
Well, if they had owned their own homes, they wouldn't have covered it in, flammable cladding in the first place,
Yeah, I mean, basically, they
wouldn't have used oily rags to insulate the walls.
Basically, Grenfell is just a really good indictment of the existence of social housing. So...
Right.
He's right.
Yeah.
Which I guess I don't know what it's called in the US.
Public
housing. Yeah.
No, but I mean that was utterly appalling. I actually have had a run in with Jacob Rees-Mogg before because I went on Question Time with him.
Oh wow.
And that was the time.
Time.
Yeah, I know, right? Question Time.
Delightful.
That was the time that he basically set off a kind of international dispute with South Africa by claiming that it was a question about Churchill. I was like, Churchill fought in the Boer War, and in the Boer War, the UK pioneered the use of concentration camps. And Jacob Rees-Mogg said they weren't really concentration camps. The death rate in the camps, they were put there for their own protection, and the death rate was the same as Glasgow at the time. And the South Africans are like, screw you, man. This is ridiculous. The Glaswegians are like, yes, because there was a public health crisis in Glasgow because of the English, and everyone kicks off and he gets into a lot of trouble. So that was fun.
Yeah, they weren't concentration camps. They were just merely camps where certain populations were concentrated and left to die of illness.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
A fairly hilarious thing to argue. It was no bit worse than being in Scotland.
Those are the Tories, but what about Labour? Because Labour is it sort of like a party divided against itself? Because it seems like a lot of people don't like Corbyn, but these are the liberal squishes. But
I also see at 6 a.m. Occasionally dunked on the Pete Buttigieg type Labour people are like, I voted Labour my entire life, and I'm burning up my card now because Jeremy Corbyn is a bridge too far.
I mean, is that
and
overplayed?
That's very comparable to our psychos
Yeah.
too.
Is this a media phenomenon, or how does Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party currently stand going into this election?
It depends how you define the party, right? Because the Parliamentary Labour Party is stuffed full of a bunch of people who got their seats 10, 20 years ago and are either wedded to Blairism or just can't imagine anything beyond capitalism and even just neoliberalism. So they find this whole situation very confusing. Some of them are just very ideologically right-wing, but a bunch of the ones that actually are committed to a different way of organizing things have left because they know that they're screwed. Everyone else who was kind of towards the right of the party and is in the Labour Party now, I feel is just probably a bit confused because their whole mindset, which was built in the 90s around this end of history moment, capitalism is going to win, everything's going to continue to get better forever and ever and ever. Then the financial crisis hits and Brexit happens and Corbyn happens, and they're just whoa, my whole brain has melted because of these events, because actually capitalism wasn't as inherently stable as we all initially assumed. So there's them, and they have been trying to wreck, the Tom Watsons have been trying to wreck.
Yeah, so talk about that. Talk about the efforts within these traitors in the Labour Party, guys like Tom Watson and others who are trying to wreck Corbyn's and the Labour Party's chances.
Yeah, well, I mean, Watson's gone now, but basically they've spent
the British Tom Watson?
Yeah. Tom Watson, Twatson, as some people have referred to him. He's gone now, so I can say this stuff. I mean, he was the deputy leader of the Labour Party, put in there initially to try and placate his wing. And he has spent the last couple of years doing all sorts of stuff to kind of undermine Jeremy's position on Brexit, stirring up trouble by just constantly briefing against people, leaking stuff.
Yeah, he was the guy who was the go-to if the British press, the Telegraph or whatever, will always anonymously quote a senior Labour Party official who's shitting all over Corbyn. It's always Tom Watson, and now they have to find a new source, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and he's got allies in that wing of the party. And they are all very in with the media. They are usually relatively able when they go on TV and stuff. So they've become kind of darlings of the liberal establishment. But I mean, they don't really have any power. And the reason for that is that the Labour Party, because it's actually a party, unlike the Democratic Party,
where you actually have to be a member. Yes, exactly.
Has 500,000 members, and it also has an alliance with the UK Labour movement and the big unions. And because of that, Corbynism is basically safe until, and if he lost this election, obviously he would have to step down, and there would be a succession. But the membership is left wing. Like the unions, some of them are not, but like most of them are broadly on side. So it's like Corbynism from that sense is safe. The thing is just there are these people at the top who are trying to maneuver and like screw shit up to like de-link the membership from the party.
Now, how much of the leadership of the party is in the Corbyn's control, him and his allies? Is it still, he's been the leader of the party for what, 4 years now?
Yes, 4 years, yeah.
And survived 2 leadership contests.
Yeah.
And went through 1 election. But at this point, it seems there's still a substantial anti-Corbyn wing.
Yeah, there's also the thing that, because the Labour Party is a party, it also has like a full-time bureaucracy. And there's like a bunch of people in that bureaucracy who do not like Corbynism. Mm-hmm. But having said that, it is like, that people have been replaced and it's becoming better. It's becoming a little bit more left wing. The same can be said about the PLP. A bunch of people are stepping down or have left to form Cucktinge PLC, aka the independent group. That's a whole another hilarious story that we could go into. Many of whom have now actually joined the Lib Dems. And yeah, a couple of others, although not that many, have been actively deselected by the members. So things are going the right way. But if this was to continue, if we were to get to a position where Corbyn had complete control, it would take like another, decade or something.
It is funny, if we could just talk about the Change UK for a second. It is funny how when the anti-Corbyn people reach the end of their rope and leave the party, they just immediately get owned.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think if Bernie Sanders were the Democratic nominee, there would be some kind of rump third party, like Howard Schultz type candidacy.
It would be so good.
Or, Michael Bloomberg, that a bunch of media libs or our Tom Watson type, our literal Tom Watson would make a big show of supporting and would end up polling at less than 1%.
Yeah. It's amazing the way that these people convince themselves that they have like a genuine social base. It just speaks to the fact that most of them have never left like a particular area in which them and all their journo friends hang out, right? It's madness. Their like ideology, which is we don't have any ideology, we just support the way everything is because the way everything is obviously the way it always has to be, is just non-existent.
You had that guy, what's it, Chukka
Ramuna.
Yeah.
He's now a Lib Dem.
Wonderful.
I know,
Delightful.
right?
Let's not forget Mike Gapes.
Mike Gapes.
Let's not forget. Let us not forget Mike Gapes.
Oh yeah, that's some good stuff. You know what I thought was hilarious? This Yang guy who had this hilarious like list of terms.
Wait,
and
you
it was
also
like
have an
power,
Andrew Yang.
Huh? No, you're Andrew Yang.
Oh, our Andrew Yang.
Do you remember he did that list of things and it was like power, point. He added like a bunch. He like had a load of
don't remember
slogans.
that.
I don't remember
Have you not
this.
seen this?
No.
I saw this the
No.
other day. He had like a bunch of slogans, and like that were like broadly left wing, and he'd like change them to make them liberal. So it was like no automation without compensation. Like power point. He changed power to PowerPoint.
Wonderful.
I need to send this. This is really funny.
But anyway, for us, it was such a shock in the last election in 2017 when, Corbyn beat the polls and he denied May another majority. And it seemed like, an hour before the polls closed, everyone thought like that was the end of the road for Corbynism, which was really this big strike, in the global fight against austerity in the electoral arena. And then he gets 40% of the vote.
Yeah.
And it seemed for a while that, just judging by the polls and the failures of May and the whole Brexit mess, that, he was for a while well positioned to go into an election and maintain, at minimum a tie with the Conservatives and with a good shot of forming a government. But now it seems that the Brexit issue itself has totally shuffled the deck and made it that much more. If that is the most salient issue, I mean, I can't even really figure out. I know this is a thing a lot of people say, but as a foreign observer, I can't even really figure out what the strong Corbyn platform on Brexit is, just because it's such an intractable issue.
I mean, it's also like a boring issue, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like ultimately the position is have another referendum. And there are reasons for like people on the left not to like the European Union, right? In the same way that like left internationalism, left internationalism here doesn't mean like supporting the IMF. So, we're going to have that debate at some point, and there are interesting things to say about it. But right now, if you're thinking about like a left populist platform, you're just not really talking that much about Brexit.
Yeah.
Because obviously, what Corbynism did in 2017, or like got some ways doing anyway, was make salient again the class divide in society. He talked about the many and the few. He literally Labour and Capital, the 1% and the 99%. That's the coalition that the left needs to mobilize here in the UK, whatever. And it requires uniting people who have a bunch of different views on like culture and like where they shop and, all this stuff into a class-based project.
Right. But with the Brexit issue as what is right now the most salient issue in the election, because it is literally the reason for the election, on those terms, I think there's broad agreement that Jez will lose if this election is about Brexit.
If it's about Brexit, right?
Right.
And actually what we're seeing is because everyone has been like spending the last 3 years listening constantly to this bullshit whilst their lives get so much worse, it's not ending up being about Brexit. It's about the fact that Jacob Rees-Mogg hates people who live in social housing. It's about like Tory MPs trying to defend the existence of billionaires. It's like about really like deep class stuff, because we've learned how to message in a way that is oppositional.
But in the short term, in the past few weeks, Labour's numbers have gone down.
They've gone up.
In the past, I'm talking in the past, the window of the past few months, rather.
Okay, yeah.
Labour's numbers have gone down, and comparably, the Lib Dem numbers have gone up. Last election, the Lib Dems put all their chips on anti-Brexit. We're just not going to do Brexit if you elect us. Our party is a referendum on Brexit. And they got blasted. They got owned. But this time around, it's the same essential message, supposedly. Like, we are the only firm anti-Brexit party. We're not squishes like Labour. And, with Corbyn being himself soft pro-Brexit. And they've been so far rewarded in the polls.
I mean, the Lib Dem message is now revoke Article 50, which is like the most extreme Remain position you can get. And the Labour position is have a second referendum, which is what was the Lib Dem position basically in the last election. So like in many ways, like the Remain element of the party is winning out. And that's, whatever, that's what's happening. It's in many ways what was inevitable. If we were just angling for the Remain votes, then we would be screwed. But what you've seen literally since the campaign has started, so since journalists have had to start being a bit more impartial, since Corbyn has got out on the campaign trail.
Well, yeah, actually, this is a really interesting thing that I always forget about UK elections, because I remember like the last time in 2017. It seemed like a long shot. Like everyone had like just absolutely written the R.I.P. Corbyn and the R.I.P. Corbyn's Labour, and then he came out of nowhere against the poll and like shocked everyone with that upset. And then like the thing is, it looks bad again. Like and leading up to it now, it looks bad for Labour again now. But again, what I always forget is as truly awful as the British press is, and like they make our press look good.
Yeah.
The hilarious thing is that as soon as a general election actually happens, they immediately become straitjacketed by very, very like tight rules about neutrality and how they cover an election. So they basically for the chunk of time of the election, like what happened last time, is they had to start covering Corbyn and the Labour manifesto like as an actual thing and do it in a fairly like in an actually neutral, balanced manner.
Yeah, they have to have people like me on to talk about it, and
they have to give an equal platform to Jews and to anti-Semites. But isn't that so? I mean, I think that a Remain position is like a perfectly reasonable, defensible position for someone on the left, whether or not we in this room agree with it necessarily. So isn't that very tempting for a Remainer to go over to the Lib Dems?
I mean, but the Lib Dems aren't going to win. So if you are performatively saying I have an identity that is I am a Lib Dem voter, then you're going to vote for the Lib Dems. If you are actually someone who is
very funny idea.
if you're concerned about Brexit, you're going to vote for the party that will give you the only credible way out of this mess if you're a Remainer, which is a second referendum.
Well, isn't a second referendum just a message that, hey, this thing you hate, we're going to keep talking about and have another vote over it?
Yeah, kind of, but Remainers lost the last one, so the chance to have another go is is big for them. I mean, personally, I think that they'd lose again, but that's besides the point. Ultimately,
So this is a sop to Remainers,
it
basically.
is. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, Remain has been, and part of the reason, Watson and all the other people on the right of the party, Chucker and Munna, etc., who after the referendum said, we need to respect the result of the referendum, and basically thought that they could win by giving over a bit whilst also maintaining their shit non-left economics, have now been gone hard on Remain, basically because they thought it would undermine Corbyn. But now because of that, he's had to come a little bit more Remainy, and is now, the party is much more Remainy, and there will be a second referendum, and most Labour MPs will support Remain.
And rounding it out, Boris also has a flag to worry about with the Brexit party.
Boris's both of his flanks are very weak. He has two soft underbellies, one of which is going to be
It's the same number of chins as well.
because he's vulnerable to the Lib Dems because the Lib Dems are just similar to people on the right of the Tory party. They're just neoliberals who like to think of themselves as cosmopolitan. So he will be vulnerable in cities amongst people who have jobs that are vulnerable in Brexit, professional services, that sort of stuff. People who think of themselves as nice liberals, right? So they have liberal politics, neoliberal politics, but they're nice because they, don't hate gays or whatever.
Yeah.
So a few months ago, when Labour's numbers were going down and tied to Lib Dem numbers going up, conservative numbers also went down, and the Brexit party surged.